I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. Our home was an old Victorian manor on the outskirts of town, walls lined with shelves that held the whispers of centuries, the scent of aged paper and the promise of hidden worlds. This library was our sanctuary, a shared passion between my wife, Eliza, and me. Yet, our neighbor, Mr. Collins, a retired cryptologist, seemed to value it just as deeply. Recently, his visits had become a daily ritual, always leaving with a satisfied nod and a book under his arm. Today was different. It was late afternoon when I found him standing in the western corner of the library, engrossed in a well-worn volume of poetry. The same book he had been poring over for weeks. "Finding new meaning in old words, Mr. Collins?" I asked, trying to mask my curiosity with lightness. He chuckled, his eyes twinkling behind his glasses. "Ah, some words are worth revisiting, John. They reveal more each time." I left him to his musings, but the seed of intrigue had been planted. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple, I found myself drawn to the book Mr. Collins had abandoned on a reading desk. The volume was old, its spine cracked, the pages yellowed. But it wasn't the age that caught my attention, it was the chaos scribbled across the pages. Symbols, letters, some highlighted, others vigorously crossed out. It looked like a code, a secret dialogue hidden within the innocuous lines of poetry. My heart raced as I flipped through the pages, the air around me thickening with the scent of betrayal. Dropping the book as if it burned, I rushed out of the library, my mind reeling. That night, I couldn't find peace. Eliza was quiet at dinner, her eyes distant. When she excused herself, murmuring something about needing a book to help her sleep, I felt a pang of dread. Unable to shake the feeling, I followed her, each step heavier than the last. Peering into the dimly lit library, the truth unfolded before me. There she was, seated in the high-backed leather chair, that very book in one hand, a pencil in the other, her brows furrowed in concentration. The scene was silent, save for the soft scratching of pencil on paper. "Eliza?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a knife. She looked up, startled. "John, I can explain." But I had seen enough. The love notes, the secret correspondence, it was all laid bare. That night, I lay in bed, the echo of betrayal gnawing at my heart. The image of Eliza and Mr. Collins, sharing secrets through a cryptic language only they understood, ignited a fire within me. Revenge became my solace, my singular focus. The plan took shape in the quiet hours of the night. I would expose their secret, shatter their illusion of clever concealment. I would divorce Eliza and ensure that Mr. Collins regretted ever stepping foot in our library. They would both pay dearly for the deception. By dawn, my resolve was as hard as the cold light that filtered through the curtains. The morning after the revelation, the house feels colder, the silence between Eliza and me denser than the fog that clings to the ground outside. I watch her at breakfast, her eyes downcast, her fingers nervously twisting a strand of hair. She knows I'm on to her, but she doesn't know what's coming next. I decide to confront Mr. Collins first. I find him in his garden, trimming roses under the pale morning sun. He looks up, a polite smile fading as he takes in my grim expression. "John, what brings you by so early?" he asks, setting his shears down. "I think you know why I'm here, Collins." "It's about the book," I say, my voice steady, my hands clenched at my sides. He stiffens, his eyes narrowing slightly. "The book? I'm not sure I don't," I cut him off, stepping closer. "I've seen the messages, the codes. You and Eliza. How long has this been going on?" Collins sighs, the fight draining out of him. "John, you're misunderstanding. It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me. Make me understand," I demand. He motions to a garden bench. "Let's sit." I owe you that much. As we sit, he begins to unravel the story. It started as a harmless flirtation. Eliza was lonely, you were always busy with work. She just wanted someone to talk to. It never went beyond the book. I struggled to contain the rage boiling inside me. And you thought hiding messages in a book was appropriate? My wife, my neighbor. It was foolish, he admits. But it was never about betrayal. It was about connection, about feeling less alone. I shake my head, disgusted. You used my library, my home, to conduct your affair. You're going to pay for this, Collins. Both of you. He looks up, his expression somber. What are you planning to do? That's for me to know. Just watch your back, I warn, standing up. I leave him there, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly. I feel a twisted satisfaction seeing him unnerved. Returning home, I find Eliza in the library, her back to me, lost in thought. She jumps when I close the door a little too hard. John, we need to talk, she begins, her voice shaky. Yes, we do, I agree, folding my arms. I spoke to Collins. He told me everything. Tears fill her eyes. John, I'm so sorry. It was stupid, a mistake. There was never any physical affair. It was just words, just escape. Escape? I echo, my voice rising. You betrayed me in our own home. And you think that's just an escape? She reaches out, but I step back. I don't know what I was thinking. Please, can we just talk about this? No, I say coldly. There's nothing left to discuss. I leave her there, her sobs echoing in the room that once held our shared dreams. The plan is clear in my mind. I will expose their deception publicly. I'll ensure that everyone knows of their betrayal, tarnishing their reputations, just as they've tarnished my trust. The game has just begun, and I am far from done. The air is tense as I sit in my study, plotting my next move. The walls, once filled with the joyous laughter of Eliza and me, now reverberate with the silent screams of my betrayal. Every tick of the grandfather clock is a reminder of the time slipping away, time that I used to craft my revenge. My first step is to expose them. I draft an email to our friends and colleagues, my fingers trembling slightly as I type. The email contains vague hints of a love affair, cryptic enough to arouse curiosity without revealing too much. I hit send, feeling a mix of satisfaction and disgust. The responses are immediate and mixed. Some express concern, others curiosity. All are unaware of the full story, but the seeds of doubt are sown. Meanwhile, I set up a meeting with a local journalist under the guise of discussing an upcoming charity event. As we sit down in the quiet corner of a downtown cafe, I steer the conversation towards more personal matters. You know, it's interesting how people close to you can turn out to be someone else entirely, I begin, watching the journalist's eyes light up with interest. Sounds like you're speaking from experience, he probes. Yes, quite a story there. Involves secret messages, a wife, and a neighbor. All hidden in plain sight, I say, my voice low. The journalist leans in, sensing a scoop. That sounds like something our readers would love. Can you share more? I nod, laying out the entire story, watching as he scribbles furiously. Make sure it gets the coverage it deserves, I say as we part, a twisted smile crossing my face. Back home, Eliza senses the change in the air. She approaches me in the kitchen, her eyes wary. What have you done, John? I look at her, my face devoid of the love that once lived there. What needed to be done? You brought this on yourself, Eliza. She shakes her head, tears in her eyes. You don't understand. It was never about love or desire. It was about feeling something other than loneliness. You were never around. Her words sting, but I push them away. You should have spoken to me, not him. We're both to blame, then, she replies softly. Before I can respond, my phone buzzes. It's a text from the journalist, stories going live tomorrow. Brace for impact. That night, the house is silent. Eliza moves to the guest room, and the space between us grows wider than the halls of our empty home. The next morning, the article hits. It's explosive. Local businessman's wife caught in secret love affair, the headline screams. The details of their coded messages are laid bare, my name ominously absent from the narrative. The phone starts ringing, friends and neighbors wanting to know more, feigning sympathy but hungry for gossip. I watch from the window as Mr. Collins's house becomes the target of whispered accusations and pointed fingers. As the sun sets, painting the sky a fiery red, I feel a hollow victory. I've won, but the cost is etched into the lines of my face, reflected in the empty rooms of a house that no longer feels like home. Eliza's voice breaks through my thoughts. Is this what you wanted, John? She asks, standing at the threshold of my study. I turn to look at her, the fading light casting shadows on her face. I thought it was. But now, I'm not so sure. The days that follow are like walking through a storm, each moment heavy with the fallout of the exposed affair. The town buzzes with the scandal, a living, breathing entity fueled by whispers and condemnation. Eliza remains isolated in the guest room, a ghost in what used to be our shared life. Mr. Collins has become a pariah, his once respected figure now the subject of scorn. One afternoon, as the autumn leaves begin to turn, signaling the death of yet another season, I find myself driving to Mr. Collins's house. The man who was once a friend looks up as I approach, his face aging 10 years in the past few days. John, he starts, standing defensively on his porch, I don't think there's anything left to say. You're right, Collins. There isn't, I reply, my voice cold. But there's still something left to do. Before he can respond, I shove past him into the house, heading straight for his study. There, on his desk, sits a collection of encrypted books, including the one used for their secret exchanges. I begin to throw each book into a box, my movements rough. What are you doing? Collins demands, fear edging his voice as he follows me into the room. These, I say, gesturing to the box filled with his cryptographic treasures, are coming with me. Consider it payment for your betrayal. He lunges forward in a futile attempt to stop me, but I push him back, his frail body no match for my rage-fueled strength. John, please, this has gone far enough, he pleads, desperation in his eyes. Not nearly far enough, I snap, dragging the box outside. I toss it into the back of my truck and then turn to face him one last time. Stay away from my family, Collins. This is your only warning. Driving away, I don't look back. The books, the symbols of their deceit, rattle in the back as I head towards an old acquaintance who runs a quiet, discreet bookshop that deals in rare and unusual items. He greets me with a nod as I unload the box. Everything here, I say firmly, I want it gone. Sold, burned, I don't care. Just make sure it never resurfaces. The shop owner, familiar with the unspoken rules of transactions like these, simply nods, accepting the box without question. With the physical remnants of Collins's betrayal disposed of, I return home to find Eliza packing her bags. The house feels empty, colder than ever. John, she says, her voice hollow, I'm leaving. I can't stay here, not after everything. Good, is all I manage to say, the finality of the word echoing between us. She pauses at the door, her suitcase in hand, and looks back at me. I'm sorry, John. Truly, I am. But I turn away, unwilling to face her, my heart sealed off. I hear the door close softly behind her, the sound like the closing of a book. In the days that follow, I deal with the quiet solitude by focusing on my work, avoiding the places where we used to go together, the memories too painful to revisit. The town slowly returns to its usual rhythms, the scandal fading into just another piece of local lore. Months later, I hear that Eliza has moved out of state, and Collins rarely leaves his house, a broken man. The revenge feels hollow, the victory pyrrhic. As I sit in my library, the shelves now rearranged, some gaps where once familiar books stood, I realize the cost of my ruthlessness. I had sought to punish them for their betrayal, but in doing so, I had exiled myself from my own heart. The loneliness is a constant echo, a reminder of what was and what can never be again. As the sun sets, casting long shadows across the floor, I close my eyes and imagine a different ending, one where forgiveness found a place at the table, and hate had not poisoned the heart. But some stories, once written, cannot be unwritten, and I am left with the ending I authored, a tale of retribution that spared no one, least of all myself.